Good evening, one and all. We welcome you all to the international seminar on sign languages, disabilities, rehabilitation, environment, health, well-being, and sustainable development 2023, commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, nation celebrating 76 years of independence, India's G20 presidency, United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 2015 to 2030 as part of awareness and campaigns, World Health Organization 75th anniversary, and also Universal Human Rights 75th anniversary. And today we are also commemorating International Day of Sign Languages, and this week is commemorated as International Week of Sign Languages in collaboration with Sri Holistic Health Foundation India and Sri Research Institute Center for Art, Sciences and Wellbeing. The registration link for this seminar has been shared in the chat box. Those who have not yet registered can register now. So before we start our sessions, let's take the blessings of Almighty.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः.
With the blessings of Almighty, we shall continue with today's commemorations. The seminar is also streaming live on YouTube, and the channel link has been shared in the chat box. For future references, if you'd like to go back and listen once again. Today, we are commemorating International Day of Sign Languages. Sign languages unite us. The International Day of Sign Languages is an unique opportunity to support, protect the linguistic identity and cultural diversity of all deaf people and other sign language users. During the 2023 celebration of International Day of Sign Languages, the world will once again highlight the unity generated by our sign languages. Deaf communities, governments, and civil society organizations maintain their collective efforts hand in hand in fostering, promoting, and recognizing as part of the country's vibrant and diverse linguistic landscapes. According to World Federation of the Deaf, there are more than 70 million deaf people worldwide. More than 80% of them living in developing countries. Collectively, they use more than 300 different sign languages. Sign languages are fully fledged natural languages, structurally distinct from the spoken languages. There is also an international sign language, which is used by the deaf people in international meetings and informally when traveling and socializing. It is considered a pidgin form of sign language that is not as complex as natural sign languages and has a limited lexicon. The Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities recognizes and promotes the use of sign languages. It makes clear that sign languages are equal in status to spoken languages and obligates states parties to facilitate the learning of sign language and promote the linguistic identity of deaf community. The UN General Assembly has proclaimed 23rd September as the International Day of Sign Languages in order to raise awareness of importance of sign language in the full realization of the human rights of the people who are deaf. The resolution establishing the day acknowledged that early access to sign language and services in sign language, including quality education available in sign languages, is vital. To the growth and development of the deaf individual and critical to the achievement of the internationally agreed development goals. It recognizes the importance of preserving sign languages as part of linguistic and cultural diversity. It also emphasizes the principle of nothing about us without us in terms of working with deaf communities. The proposal for the day came from the World Federation of the Deaf, in short known as WFD, a federation of 135 national associations of deaf people representing approximately 70 million deaf people's human rights worldwide. The resolution 72/161 was sponsored by the Permanent Mission of Antigua and Barbuda to the United Nations, co-sponsored by 97 United Nations member states and adopted by consensus on 19 December 2007. The choice of 23rd September commemorates the date that the WFD was established in 1951. This day marks the birth of an advocacy organization which has one of its main goals and the preservation of sign languages and deaf culture as prerequisites to the realization of the human rights of the deaf people. The International Day of Sign Languages was the first celebrated in 2018 as part of International Week of the Deaf. The International Week of the Deaf was first celebrated in September 1958 and has since evolved into a global movement of deaf unity and concerted advocacy to make awareness of the issues deaf people face in their everyday lives. This year's theme is a world where deaf people everywhere can sign anywhere. The World Federation of Deaf invites all public places, public landmarks, and official buildings, residential houses, country buildings, city halls, and others to be spotlighted in blue light on 23rd September 2023 by highlighting blue color on their buildings and landmarks, a reaffirmation of our joint commitment to supporting national sign languages and showing solidarity with global deaf communities. The United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy provides foundation for sustainable transformative progress on disability inclusion through all pillars of the work of the United Nations: peace and security, human rights and development. The strategy enables the UN system to support implementation of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and other international human rights instruments, as well as the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Sign language leads to love and inclusion in Tunisia. Mohammed Ben Smida, Salma Saeed, and Ben Mabret all know very well in many hardships of growing deaf in Tunisia. Persons with disabilities living in Tunisia face discrimination and barriers every day that restrict them from participating in society on an equal basis with others. UN Human Rights is working with the Tunisian government and civil society to eliminate barriers and promote full inclusion of the people with disabilities, including through the recognition of sign language of deaf people.
The COVID-19 crisis is affecting every aspect of our societies, revealing the extent of exclusion that the most marginalized members of society experience. Today, I would like to highlight how the pandemic is affecting the world's 1 billion people with disabilities. Even under normal circumstances, persons with disabilities are less likely to access education, health care and income opportunities or participate in the community. This is exacerbated for those in humanitarian and fragile contexts. People with disabilities are more likely to live in poverty, and they experience higher rates of violence, neglect, and abuse. The pandemic is intensifying these inequalities and producing new threats. Today, we are launching a report that recommends a disability-inclusive response and recovery for everyone. People with disabilities are among the hardest hit by COVID-19. They face a lack of accessible public health information, significant barriers to implement basic hygiene measures, and inaccessible health facilities. If they contract COVID-19, many are more likely to develop severe health conditions which may result in death. The share of COVID-19 related deaths in care homes, where older people with disabilities are overrepresented, ranges from 19% to an astonishing 72%. In some countries, healthcare rationing decisions are based on discriminatory criteria such as age or assumptions about quality or value of life based on disability. We cannot let this continue. We must guarantee the equal rights of people with disabilities to access healthcare and life-saving procedures during the pandemic. Persons with disabilities who faced exclusion in employment before this crisis are now more likely to lose their job and will experience greater difficulties in returning to work. Yet only 28% of people with significant disabilities have access to benefits, and only 1% in low-income countries. People with disabilities, particularly women and girls, face a greater risk of domestic violence, which has surged during the pandemic. I urge governments to place people with disabilities at the center of COVID-19 response and recovery efforts, and to consult and engage with people with disabilities. Persons with disabilities have valuable experience to offer of thriving in situations of isolation and alternate working arrangements. Looking to the future, we have a unique opportunity to design and implement more inclusive and accessible societies to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Last year, I launched the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy to ensure the UN system is doing its part. The strategy represents the UN's commitment to achieve transformative and lasting change. When we secure the rights of people with disabilities, we are investing in our common future.
Eleven-year-old Fatoumata Diarra has not been able to hear since she fell ill when she was a baby. Hello, she says, and spells her name. When Fatoumata was 12 months old, she had an episode of vomiting. The right side of her body went into spasm. She became paralyzed from the waist down. Daily sessions of acupuncture helped her regain the use of her legs, but she'd lost her hearing. It's a 20-minute ride to Bamako's only primary school for hearing-impaired children. The School of Hope has 160 pupils. Fatoumata is in grade 4. When the school opened in 1994, Musa Sanogo and the other teachers walked the streets to find pupils.
There were very few schools before, so there was a lot of discrimination, of rejection. But now that there are many more schools, the discrimination has gone right down, both in Bamako and in the rest of Mali.
It's not known how many children there are with disabilities in this West African country. Based on international estimates, there may be as many as 500,000.
I mean, these children have the same rights, and we have to identify them, we have to know where they are, we have to support their families, we have to support their communities, we have to bring them where the children should be. And the children, they have to be at school, they have to play together, they have to grow, and they have to learn, and they have to be citizens.
Fatoumata is well on the way, but in developing countries, thousands of other disabled children remain invisible. For more information, go to unicef.org.
Thì nó bắt đầu từ chữ cái nào? Chữ cái nào? Đúng rồi, chữ gì? Chữ gì? Đúng rồi, chữ bờ ha. Rồi, Khánh Linh bỏ vào cho cô Văn nha.
Hello and welcome to 21st Century. I'm Daljit Dhaliwal. In high school, he was told that he couldn't hope to have a career as a musician because he was deaf. But still he dreamed of becoming a rap star and bringing his music and his message to the world. Join us for a story of true determination and defiance, the story of Signmark.
It ain't easy, man. Picture yourself in my shoes. The daily life of me, yeah, this is my blues.
I could feel the beat. It was relatively simple. It was powerful. It was strong.
He was born deaf, but that didn't stop him. Now 33 years old and known as Signmark, he's become a rapper with a worldwide following.
They wanna know, how do I answer the phone, and can I drive a car? How I get chicks in the bar? How do I wake up if I can't hear the alarm clock? What about communicating in the dark?
Signmark, who's from Finland, was drawn to rap music when he was a teenager.
The music was full of attitude. The videos were full of attitude, and I was really impressed by that. At that time, when I fell in love with rap music and the hip-hop culture, I wasn't really thinking about the fact it was black music or it was American music in some way. It was music.
Actions speak louder than words, louder than words. Actions speak louder.
And now, that same music has become Signmark's language of change. As the first deaf rapper ever to be signed by a major record label, Signmark's aim is no less than to shatter stereotypes about deaf people once and for all.
If they had no way, our dreams will never come true when I'm concerned.
Signmark, real name Marco Vori Haimo, takes his medium and message of inclusion all over the globe, like this concert at Minnesota University, the last stop on his most recent tour of the United States.
Looking at me strange, I'm the first deaf rapper in the industry, ain't the same. Whoa. Hey, where we at? Come on and say. If you wanna talk to the man don't listen, talk to the hand.
On stage, Signmark uses sign language for the deaf audience, while his collaborator Brandon, seen on the left, sings for the hearing audience. Speaking through an interpreter, Signmark tells us he was 7 years old when he first realized he needn't be shut out from music. Until that moment, he'd only been able to watch as his hearing grandparents sang Christmas carols.
One Christmas, I sat with my grandma and grandpa and begged them. I asked them if I could try to sign the Christmas carols myself. So I asked my grandmother to look at me when she sang. And I read her lips and copied what I could and turned it into sign language best I could and signed it for my mom and dad. And that's how I fell in love with music.
Here's how it works. Signmark first of all writes down a message or a story. Brandon then converts this into lyrics in English, while Signmark develops matching sign language. There's one catch. Both the English lyrics and the sign language have to rhyme, but rhyming in sign language has its own rules.
Sign language has 4 parameters. One is hand shape, one is movement, one is palm orientation, and then placement.
So even when the world comes crashing down, even though my luck will turn around.
In sign language, you have visual rhymes. The rhyme is created by the same shape rather than the same sound. For example, a pointing finger.
It means bored. If I change the placement of bored, I mean serious. So that's rhyme.
Can this be the end of the transmission? I'm sending you a message, sensing when missing. Can this be the
Signmark also helps decide on the rhythm and the instrumentation for each track. He learned what he wanted from watching MTV music videos when he was growing up.
I really watched how, for instance, a violin player, what their face looked like, what they did, and that gave me some clues about the music. On stage, it's really important that I have good bass, so I can feel the beat pulsing.
He senses that pulse through his feet.
I work with Brandon. I can read his lips to see where he's at in the song, and we key off of each other. He can see my signs, and we key off of that.
So far, Signmark has taken his visual poetry to 5 continents, performing live, from this concert in Ethiopia in Africa, to the United Kingdom, to Japan. But none of this came easily. Discouragement started early when he was at high school.
For me, I wanted to be an artist, and all my teacher could say to me was, well, I understand you have dreams, I understand you have passion, and I think that's great, but you also need to understand and accept that you're deaf. I've had plenty of people stab me in the back. I've had plenty of people trying to pull me down. Lots of Finnish hearing artists who are resentful. I'm traveling the world and my success is out there to see, and lots of people are resentful of that.
What you doing over there? There's a party over here. Winners over here, losers over there. What you doing over there? There's a party over here. Winners over here, losers over there.
The message about me needing to stop really strengthened my resolve and made me want to go back and get it right and prove them wrong. And I did.
He's really touching many thousands of people with his message.
Charles Radcliffe of the United Nations Human Rights Office in New York says Signmark is contributing to a global change in attitudes, a rebellion against the traditional exclusion of disabled people from jobs and education, even from social life.
What we're seeing now, and it's been a process that's been happening for 2 decades or so, is a shift in people's attitudes. We're not looking now at what is wrong with the individual, but what is wrong with the environment. that is preventing people with disabilities from enjoying the same rights as everybody else.
Okay. Even if the world comes crashing.
Helping people alter their perceptions of deaf people is a key part of Signmark's performances. Wherever he goes, he stages an event he calls a silent shout, a mass lesson in sign language.
Proud, back against the wall. Even if the world comes crashing down, and even if my luck will turn around, I stand tall, proud, back against the wall.
Signmark's message is particularly resonant here at the University of Minnesota, which has a proud and strong tradition of providing support to its deaf and hard of hearing community. Part of that community is third-year student TJ Middlebrook.
I think Signmark is beyond amazing. He is the definition of the ability of what deaf people have. Sometimes they underestimate themselves, but when you see him, it's like when I see him, it makes me realize that the whole world's out there waiting for me to do something, and I just have to take the step forward out the door.
What y'all looking at? It is what it is. I'ma do me and you do you. Ha. Take it away. It's okay. It's okay.
Both of Signmark's albums to date challenge any notion that deaf people should accept limitations.
Okay. Yeah.
His current CD, Breaking the Rules, sends out a confident challenge to the critics who doubted him.
Signmark, we going up, not down.
But the sound and tone on his first release was very different. Called simply Signmark, it was mostly in Finnish. One video from the album attracted a special attention in Finland. It tells the darker side to the history of deaf people there in the 20th century. After discovering that deaf people were legally barred from marrying from 1929 to 1969, Signmark decided to reenact in his video the anguish of a deaf couple from that period, told they weren't allowed to have a child together.
I broke a lot of hearts. I made a lot of people cry from that album. There was a lot of rage and anger because I was bringing a lot of deaf history out into the open.
From the 30s onward in Finland, a number of deaf women were sterilized. No one knows how many. The policy was influenced by pseudo-scientific eugenics theories, which held that the Finnish race would degenerate if disabled people were allowed to procreate.
We want all of those cameras to see you signing so the world...
But for Signmark, the battles to be fought are not just about history, they're also very much about the present. He wants people to think carefully about how they regard deaf people. Is deafness a disability or something else?
My only aid, really, is an interpreter. But interpreting is still language. It's not an aid per se. If you knew sign language, I wouldn't need an interpreter here, right? So am I disabled or just a linguistic minority?
There are not enough people representing disabilities and other minorities.
Designated by the government of Finland as a special representative for disabled people, Signmark is part of the working group on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. His goal is to push for access for deaf people into every area of life.
There is access everywhere. You just have to stand up and fight for it. Because if you don't, it's not going to give it to you. Like on a super platter, you have to fight for it. I feel like people need to stop seeing people as somebody to love. And I just hope that people will have that in their hearts someday soon.
Signmark and many other courageous campaigners are working to bring that day closer for the estimated 70 million deaf people globally. looking to be treated as equals, determined to live life at full volume.
We're all human, right? That's the common thread.
Take it away, ayy.
Sign language is crucial for deaf children, and sign language is hugely beneficial for children who suffer from autism, for children who are non-verbal. I think it's really important to remember that 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents with no experience of deafness, and so it can feel alien and scary, and early intervention is crucial. We know that the first 3 years of a child's life is crucial for brain development, and to get sign language into schools, but not just schools, education doesn't just start in schools, it starts when the child's born. The thing with deafness, it's a silent disability, you can't see it and it's not life-threatening. So it's so easy for it to slip under everybody's radar. So more specialist training for teachers and classroom assistants so they're fully equipped when that child starts school. And a fully accessible curriculum.
Every nation, for that matter, a nation has more than one or more sign languages. Even India has Indian Sign Language, an institute, Indian Sign Language Research and Training Center, in short known as ISSLRTC, at New Delhi under the aegis of Divyangan, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India has celebrated Sign Language Day 2023, today, 23rd September 2023 at Beam Hall, Dr. Ambedkar International Center, Janpad, New Delhi. Ever since the United Nations declared 23rd September as the International Day of Sign Languages, the ISSLRTC celebrates it every year on 23rd September. DEPWD, it is Department, and ISSLRTC are making all the possible efforts to bring more citizens, stakeholders, service providers, service providing agencies, deaf schools, NGOs, activists, deaf leaders, educators, researchers, etc. together are making all the possible efforts into the fold of Sign Language Day in order to create positive awareness about Indian sign language among all sections of society. The day also reminds us the need and importance of preserving sign language as part of linguistic and cultural diversity. All the professionals, parents of deaf students and institutions working in the field of Indian Sign Language from all walks of life are important target groups to rope in the Sign Language Day celebrations. The theme of this year's Sign Language Day 2023 is a world where deaf people everywhere can sign anywhere. A world where deaf people are seen as part of natural range of human diversity. And national sign languages are celebrated and used everywhere as part of national societies. On this day, collective efforts of deaf communities, governments, civil society representatives are made to ensure their children and youth know their national sign languages as a step towards building societies in which deaf people everywhere can sign anywhere. So, Minister of State for Social Justice Empowerment, Pratima Bhaumik, So launch of basic communication skills in Indian language, an online self-learning course. The primary aim of this course is to foster basic communication skills in Indian language. It is tailor-made for parents of deaf children, siblings, educators, and individuals interested in acquiring basic knowledge of Indian Sign Language. The course comprises 10 modules covering 30 essential topics, ensuring a comprehensive grasp of basic ISL communication. Launch of 267 signs of financial terms in Indian Sign Language, which are jointly developed by ISSLRTC, Society General, and VShesh. The signs for financial terms are developed to facilitate communication between deaf and hearing people working in financial and banking sector. The project will help improve the employment prospects of deaf job-seeking youth. Launch of 10,000 ISL dictionary terms on website, launch of ISL course in special schools for hearing impaired, launch of video relay service for the deaf community through WhatsApp video call. Video relay service is a video telecommunication service which enables deaf people to communicate with hearing people via a remote sign language interpreter linked through the video communication. The service can be broadly used in hospitals, government offices, educational institutes, banks, workplace, interviews, police station, and court, etc. The service is provided at free of cost through WhatsApp number 8929667579. I am repeating the number. If you want, you can save this number. I will also put in chat box. It will be useful for everyone. And you can also circulate. And the center also conducted 6th Indian Sign Language Competition 2023, a national level competition held for the students with learning disabilities. Hearing disabilities. The students have showcased their creativity and knowledge by participating in the competition. And all the winners of 6th ISL competition a distributed trophy and certificate during the Sign Language Day 2023 program. World Federation of the Deaf is a global organization working to ensure equal rights for 70 million deaf people around the globe. 70 million deaf people, 200 plus sign languages, unlimited potential. Guided by Action Plan and the CRPD, the World Federation of the Deaf uses a variety of approaches to further the equality of deaf people throughout the world, advancing human rights and sign languages worldwide. And also in over 130 countries, deaf people are engaging in local advocacy and having a global impact. And WDF also represents deaf people interest on a global scale, advocating for the rights of the full participation in all aspects of life. A world that is more conscious of deaf persons' needs and rights is a world where deaf people are provided access they need to continue as equals, ensuring accessibility. With equal rights and opportunities, deaf people succeed. We are dedicated to our work because we believe everyone is entitled to their human rights. But most of the time, deaf people are not. We value deaf people, sign languages, and the diversity they bring to our work. And above all WFD recognizes that incredible potential to contribute to the society when given bilingual education and sign language rights. Human rights are universal, indivisible, and interconnected. They belong to all people regardless of gender, nation, or ethnic origin, color, religion, language, or any other status such as disability or deafness. Unfortunately, due to societal prejudices and incorrect assumptions, deaf people's rights are often overlooked or denied, especially in developing countries. The WHD works towards promoting, advancing human rights of deaf people. The United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities is at the core of WFD work. It provides with a global framework and mandate for the achievement of human rights for the deaf people. WFD use the CPRD in their advocacy and training and encourage their members to as well. The 2030 agenda is a set of goals and actions that will guide the global community in overcoming poverty and achieving sustainable development. The World Federation of the Deaf promotes and works towards the aims of 2030 agenda by insisting upon deaf people involvement in it. We will not address and overcome poverty and marginalization if we do not include the world's poorest in our plans and make sure that no one is left behind in development. International Week of Deaf People, in short known as IWDP, or International Day of Sign Languages 2023, in short known as IDSL, with the theme for 2023, a world where deaf people everywhere can sign anywhere. This entire week, there are different themes. Starting from Monday, 18th September, the theme was Declaration on the Human Rights of the Deaf Children. At the WFD's 21st General Assembly in South Korea, members approved the Declaration on the Rights of Deaf Children. Today, we call upon global communities to showcase how they are working to achieve these rights. You can share videos on social media and host seminars and events highlighting these rights and what remains to achieve these rights for every deaf child. The WFD invites everyone to declare their support for the declaration and signing their names to this declaration, the Declaration on the Rights of Deaf Children. Tuesday, 19th September, the theme was Building Capacity Across the Globe. Around the world, millions of deaf people still lack access to the basic human rights. The World Federation of the Deaf has inaugurated a 60-country project with the aim of building capacities in deaf communities across the globe, particularly in the 60 UN member states which do not have national associations of the deaf people. So join us in supporting deaf communities in these countries by hosting awareness, raising events on deaf lives around the world, in your local communities by supporting deaf communities in Global South, and by donating to the WFD's work. On Wednesday, 20th September, the theme was Realizing Nothing Without Us. Deaf communities are experts on deaf lives. CRPD Article 4.3 makes it clear that governments have an obligation to consult with organizations of deaf people on all matters related to the deaf people. The WFD believes that this principle is also applicable to other projects and activities. Representative deaf organizations must be involved. From the beginning, in all projects and initiatives to do with deaf people and sign languages, on this day, highlight your collaboration with deaf communities. Thursday, 21st September, the theme was Putting Deaf People on the Agenda. Deaf communities worldwide work to ensure policies and programs reflect the lived realities of deaf people's lives. Today, we call upon national governments, international institutions, research centers, and policy-making bodies to center deaf people in their work. There is still a significant lack of data on the deaf people's lives and less on the use of sign languages. Today, we highlight the research done on the deaf lives to date and call for more disaggregated data collection and monitoring of the deaf people and sign languages. Yesterday, that is Friday, 22nd September, the theme was Achieving Sign Language Rights for All. The legal recognition of national sign languages is an important step towards achieving basic human rights for all deaf people. 60% of the state parties of the CRPD still have not achieved legal recognition of their national sign languages. Legal recognition is a process that allows for greater awareness of deaf people's linguistic and cultural rights and paves the way for social change. Today, we encourage sharing of stories of what the legal recognition of sign languages has meant for you and your communities. Finally, today, that is Saturday, September 23rd, International Day of Sign Languages, with the theme, A World Where Deaf People Everywhere Can Sign Anywhere. Today, we share the WFD's vision of the world where deaf people everywhere can sign anywhere. A world where deaf people are seen as part of natural range of human diversity, and national sign languages are celebrated and used everywhere as part of national societies. The WFD calls upon all governments to make measures to ensure that at least 50% of the children and youth know their national sign languages as a step towards building societies in which deaf people everywhere can sign anywhere. Tomorrow, that is Sunday, 24th September, the last day of the commemoration of International Week of Deaf People 2023. We end this International Week of Deaf People by highlighting the many ways in which our communities represent the broad array of diverse human experiences to be found across the globe. Deaf people are everywhere and represented in every national, cultural, linguistic, and ethnic group. This is a strength of our communities. Today, WFD calls upon our deaf communities to recognize and take specific actions to ensure our communities are inclusive of all deaf people. So everyone, we invite everyone to join the Global Leaders Challenge on this 2023 edition of the International Day of Sign Languages. The world will highlight the unity generated by sign languages. The country leaders, whether prime ministers, presidents, other government officials, members of parliaments, members of councils, should sign this year's theme, a world where deaf people everywhere can sign anywhere in their national language. We invite all public places, public landmarks, and official buildings, presidential houses, city halls, stadiums, and others to be spotlighted in blue light on 23rd September 2023. This event aims to unite its world, its citizens, communities, and societies through shining a blue light on the sign languages. Previous year, the theme was Building Inclusive Communities for All for 2022. For 2021, the theme was Celebrating Thriving Deaf Communities. And 2020, the theme was Reaffirming Deaf People's Human Rights. Declarations on the rights of deaf children. At the WFD's 21st General Assembly in South Korea, members approved the Declaration of Rights of Deaf Children. This declaration contains 10 articles proclaiming the rights of all deaf children around the world. This declaration is an essential tool for promoting the rights of deaf children. We encourage you to read it and use it in your advocacy work at local, regional, national, and international levels. Declaration on the Rights of Deaf Children. Article 1. All deaf children, like all human beings, are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Article 2 states all deaf children have a right to a sign language. National sign languages are the only fully accessible language for deaf children from birth onwards. Article 3 states that right of the deaf children to go to their natural sign language shall not be infringed. Article 4 says all parents, caregivers, carers, and family members of deaf children must be provided with free instructions in their national sign languages. Article 5 states all deaf children have a right to quality, inclusive, multilingual education in their national sign languages and national written languages. Article 6 states all deaf children have a right to learn linguistic identity and culture of the deaf community. Article 7 states all deaf children have the right to protection from language deprivation. Not providing access to the national sign languages to all deaf children constitutes discrimination. Article 8 states all deaf children have a right to fluent national sign language models, including teachers in education. Article 9 states all deaf children have a right to express their views on all matters affecting them. Article 10 states all the above declarations must be implemented for all the deaf children immediately and without delay. A world where deaf people everywhere can sign anywhere. The celebration which arised from the Resolution 72 by 161 of the United Nations adopted in 2017, which recognizes the 23rd September as an International Day of Sign Languages. Following the success of the Global Leader Challenges for 3 years, the WFD is proud to announce its continuation to be achieved during the upcoming, that is today's International Day of Sign Languages on 23rd September 2020. This challenge aims to promote the use of national sign languages by national and global This challenge aims to promote the use of national languages by national and global leaders in partnership with their national associations of the deaf people. Your country leaders might be prime ministers, presidents, other government officials, members of parliaments, or members of any council should sign the national language, a word where deaf people everywhere can sign everywhere. The Global Leaders Challenge is an opportunity for the National Association of the Deaf People to establish and maintain sustainable collaborations with their national leaders through the use of their national As we have seen, there are more than 200 plus sign languages which are recognized, but there might be more than 300 plus sign languages in use around the world today. The number is not known with any confidence as new sign languages emerge frequently through creolization and de novo, that occasionally through language planning. In some countries such as Sri Lanka, Tanzania, each school for the deaf may have a separate language known only to its students and sometimes denied by the school. On the other hand, countries may share sign languages, although sometimes under different names like Croatian and Serbian, Indian and Pakistani. Deaf sign languages also arise outside educational institutions, especially in village communities with high levels of congenital deafness. But there are significant sign languages developed for hearing as well, such as speech taboo languages used in Aboriginal Australia. Scholars are doing field surveys to identify the world sign languages. So we can list the entire list into 3 sections: deaf sign languages, auxiliary sign languages, sign modes of spoken languages. Deaf sign languages, which are preferred languages of deaf communities around the world. These include village sign languages shared with hearing community and deaf community sign languages. Auxiliary sign languages, which are not native languages, but sign systems of varying complexity using alongside spoken languages. Simple gestures are not included as they do not constitute language. Sign modes of spoken language. Sign modes of spoken languages, also known as manually coded languages, which bridges between signed and spoken languages. The list of deaf sign languages is sorted regionally and alphabetically, and such groupings should not be taken to imply any genetic relationships between these languages. In Africa, there are at least 25 sign languages, according to the researcher Nobutaka Kame. Some have distributions that are completely independent of those of African spoken languages. At least 13 sign languages, mainly from Europe and America, have been introduced to at least 27 African nations. Some of the 23 sign languages documented by Kame has originated with or been influenced by them. Languages are assigned families, implying a genetic relationship between these languages. As British, Sweden, perhaps a branch of BSL, French with branches, ASL American, Austro-Hungarian, Danish, Italy, German, Japanese, and language isolates. Village sign language or village sign, also known as shared sign language, is a local indigenous sign language used by both deaf as well as hearing in an area with a high incidence of congenital deafness. When the language is not shared with the village or hearing community as a whole, but it is only used with a few families and their friends, it may be distinguished as family sign language. And in such cases, most of the hearing Indo-Pakistani Sign Language, IPSL, is predominant sign language in the subcontinent of Asia. Some scholars regard varieties in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and possibility Nepal as a variety of Indo-Pakistani Sign Language. Others recognize some varieties as separate languages. The ISO standard currently distinguishes Indian Sign Language, Pakistani Sign Language, West Bengal Sign Language, or otherwise known as Kolkata Sign Language, Nepali Sign Language. Deaf schools in South Asia are overwhelmingly oralist in their approach, unlike American Sign Language and sign languages of European countries. IPSL doesn't have much official government support, unlike in India. The deaf communities of the Indian subcontinent are still struggling for IPSL to gain the status of sign language as a minority language. Through sign language, though sign language is used by many deaf people in the subcontinent, it is not used officially in schools for teaching purposes. In 2005, the National Curricular Framework gave some degree of legitimacy to sign language education by hinting that sign language may qualify as an optional third language choice for hearing students. NCERT in March 2006 published a chapter on sign language in a class 3 text, emphasizing the fact that it is language like any other and is yet another mode of communication. The aim was to create a healthy attitudes towards the disabled. Strenuous efforts have been made by deaf communities, NGOs, researchers, and other organizations working for the people with hearing abilities, including the All India Federation of Deaf, National Association of the Deaf, in the direction of encouraging ISL. Until 2001, no formal classes for teaching ISL were conducted in India. During this period, Ali Yawar Jung National Institute of Hearing and the Handicap, Mumbai, established an ISL cell. It started a course called Diploma in Indian Sign Language Interpreter course. The curriculum designed for the course aims to develop professional communication in sign language and ability to interpret professionally. It also focused on the basic understanding of the deaf community and deaf culture. Later, the course was offered in the regional centers in Hyderabad, Bhubaneswar, Kolkata, and Delhi. Besides AYJ, NIHH, organizations like Mook Badir's Sangatan in Indore and several other organizations offer ISL classes. Many NGOs all over the world and all over the India use their own sign languages. In India, ISL is used to teach English and various academic and vocational courses. These NGOs include Ishara from Mumbai, Deaf Way Foundation, Delhi, the Noida Deaf School and Leadership Education, Empowerment of the Deaf, LEAD, Pune, Speaking Hands Institute of the Deaf, Punjab, etc. The association like Association of Sign Language Interpreters and the Indian Sign Language Interpreters Association were established in 2006 and 2008 respectively for the professional development of interpreters in India. 2 schools have been established in India which follow bilingual approach to teach deaf students. The schools are Bajaj Institute of Learning in Dehradun, Mook Badir Sangatan in Indore. Apart from the establishment of the organizations working for deaf people, there have also been experts in research on sign language in India. Recent research developments included the studies by research scholars of the Jawaharlal Nehru University and the University of Delhi, including Walang 2007, Sinha 2003, Idam 2010, Kurukshetra 2013. There is also a work on problems and awareness of IPSL and typology of IPSL verbs. Apart from these, there have been continued works by the scholars on linguistic aspects of IPSL as well as on the varieties of IPSL, Bhattacharya and Hidam 2010. There are many varieties of sign languages in the region including many pockets of home sign and local sign languages, such as Gandruk Sign Language, Jankot Sign Language, Jumla Sign Language in Nepal, and Alipur Sign Language in India, which appear to be language isolates. There are also various Sri Lankan sign languages which may not even relate to each other. However, the urban varieties while the sign systems in IPSL appears to be largely indigenous, elements in IPSL although discussion of sign languages and lives of deaf people is extremely rare in history of South Asian literature, there are few references of deaf people and gestural communication in text dating from ankylosis. Symbolic hand gestures is also known as mudras, have been employed in religious context in Hinduism, Buddhism, Zoroastrianism, and As we have seen that sign language is not universal and every nation has one or more of sign languages. Sign language is a visual means of communicating through hand signals, gestures, facial expressions, and body language. It's a form of communication for the deaf and hard of hearing community. By sign language can be useful for their other groups of peoples as well. People with disabilities, including autism, apraxia of speech, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, may also find sign language beneficial for communicating. So there is no single sign language used around the world like spoken language. Sign languages develop naturally through different groups of people interacting with each other. So there are many varieties. There are somewhat between around 300 different types of sign languages used around the globe today. So interestingly, most countries that share a same spoken language do not necessarily have the same sign language. As each other's English, for example, has 3 variations. American Sign Language, in short known as ASL, British Sign Language known as BSL, and Australian Sign Language, ASEAN, and also French Sign Language, and many. Most people start their sign language journey by learning A to Z or alphabet equivalent in sign. The use of hands to represent individual letters of a written alphabet is called finger spelling. It's an important tool that helps signers manually spell out names of people, places, and things that don't have an established sign. For example, most sign languages have a specific sign for the word tree, but may not have a specific sign for an oak tree. So, oak would be finger spelled to convey that specific meaning. Of course, not every language uses the Latin alphabet like English, so their sign language alphabet differs as well. Some manual alphabets are one-handed, such as in ASL and French Sign Language, and others 2 hands like BSL or ASEAN. Though there are similarities between some of the different manual alphabets, each sign language has its own style and modifications and remains unique. Although American Sign Language has the same alphabet as English, ASL is not a subset of English language. American Sign Language was created independently and it has its own linguistic structure. It is in fact descended from Old French Sign Language. Signs are also not expressed in the same order as the words are in English. This is due to the unique grammar and visual nature of the sign language. ASL is used by roughly 500,000 people in the US. English, British, Australian, and New Zealand Sign Language, also in short known as BANZSL, sharing a sign language alphabet is British Sign Language, Australian Sign Language, and New Zealand Sign Language. Unlike ASL, these alphabets use 2 hands instead of 1 hand. Chinese Sign Language, probably the most used sign language in the world, but there is currently no data to confirm this because China has the largest population. So it is assumed to be so, but now India surpassed China. So most probably, and the population of disabilities also impact these figures. Chinese Sign Language uses the hands to make visual representations of written Chinese characters. The language has been developed and developing since 1950s. French Sign Language is similar to American Sign Language since it is in the fact the origin of American Sign Language is from French Sign Language. But there are minor differences throughout the French Sign Language. French Sign Language also has a pretty fascinating history. Japanese Sign Languages is based on the Japanese alphabet, which is made up of phonetic syllables. JSL is known as Nihon Shua in Japan. Arabic Sign Language family is a family of sign languages across the Arab Middle East. Data on these languages is somewhat scarce, but a few languages have been distinguished, including Levantine Arabic Sign Language. Spanish Sign Language is officially recognized by the Spanish government. It is native to the Spain, except Catalonia and Valencia. Many other countries that speak Spanish do not use Spanish Sign Language. Mexican Sign Language is different from Spanish, using a different verbs and word order. The majority of people who use Mexican Sign Language reside in Mexico City. Guadalajara and Monterrey. Variation in this language is high between age groups and religious backgrounds. Ukrainian Sign Language is derived from the broad family of French Sign Languages. It uses a one-hand manual alphabet of 33 signs, which make use of 23 hand shapes of USL. Plains Sign Talk, indigenous to North America. Plain Sign Talk, also known as Plain Sign Language, is an indigenous sign languages that was once used between Plains nations to support trade, tell stories, and conduct ceremonies, and act as a daily communication language for deaf people. It was used between nations across central Canada and the central and western United States and northern Mexico. Now, how to learn fingerspell? We have few videos where we can watch. So let's watch a short video. This is the sign language for alphabets as per Indian Sign Language. Hope we got some insights on Indian Sign Language and various sign languages, and also commemoration of Indian Sign Language International Day of Sign Language and International Week of Sign Language 2020. The registration link has been shared in the chat box. Those who have not registered are requested to register. Those who have already registered can ignore. The feedback form has been raised in the form of votes. We request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form. We are observing that in some of the events, participants are attending but not registering, and also not giving feedback, as the certificates are generated by system automatically. So if you don't need certificates, fine, but those who require certificates, kindly register for every event. And also, when you are attending, also provide feedback. So the basic criteria, eligibility criteria is first registration, participation, and feedback, which will make you eligible for the certificate. Thank you everyone for joining us today for the commemorations of International Day of Sign Language and International Week of Sign Language. So see you all tomorrow at the same time for tomorrow's sessions. Before leaving, we request everyone to quickly fill up the feedback form. And the recent seminar that was conducted on 21st, the certificates have been issued. Those who have registered and attended and also provided feedback. We have observed many has attended, but as the entire process is handled by the system, we have seen the system automatically generates the certificates, but we have seen very few certificates were generated, as we have manually observed that many people who have attended have not registered. And some have not provided feedback. So these are technical problems that need to be looked in. So we request everyone to carefully follow the instructions. Make sure whenever you are attending, if you have not registered, ask for the registration form. It is also available on the website. You can register, or even if you have not registered, at least at the end of the event, make sure you are registering so that before the certificate generation process starts, if you are registered, then the data will be available in the registration. And at the same time, ensure that you are joining and attending the minimum duration so that your attendance will be considered. And also provide feedback form wherever, individual feedback forms, because participants keep joining and leaving. You see many participants. Some of them do not stay for the entire duration. In that case, this individual feedback forms after each session will help you to mark your attendance, at least for the duration you have attended. So if it meets the minimum eligibility criteria of attendance, then you will be eligible for the certificate. If you don't provide feedback, you will lose that opportunity. So wherever, whenever feedback form is raised, if you are available on the platform, mark your attendance and also provide your feedback. So thank you once again, everyone, for joining us. See you all tomorrow at the same time at 6 o'clock. Take care. Good night. And there are also upcoming sessions, seminars, which have been shared already to everyone. We request everyone to register. Once you receive the registration messages, the invitation, we request everyone to immediately register so that you can attend the events directly. Thank you once again. For leaving, ensure that you are filling up the feedback form. Take care. Good night.